Hi, Total Recapped here. Today we will be going through the events of the 2014 horror thriller movie The Babadook, directed by Jennifer Kent. Warning, this video contains spoilers, so watch at your own risk. Now let's get right into the movie. Amelia Vanek is a troubled and exhausted widow living in the Australian city of Adelaide. She works at a nursing home. She has a 6-year-old son Samuel, whom she brought up alone. Amelia's husband Oskar was killed in a car accident that occurred as he drove Amelia to the hospital during labor. Sam has begun displaying erratic behavior. He has become insomniac and wakes up Amelia in the middle of the night, afraid of some imaginary monster. He has built weapon systems to fight the monsters. Therefore, Amelia has to read Sam nighttime storybooks every night to help him fall asleep. One day at work, Amelia receives a phone call from Sam's school. She quickly rushes to his school to find out that Sam has brought one of his weapons that he made to fight the monster to school. Cognizant of Sam's continued behavioral problems, the school decides to keep Sam separate from other students in class, but an offended Amelia decides to transfer Sam to another school. Later at night, Amelia does the routine check inside the closet and under the bed for Sam's imaginary monster and reads Sam a nighttime storybook before bed. She gives Sam the liberty to choose a book. He asks his mother to read a pop-up storybook called Mr. Babadook. Halfway through the book, Amelia realizes that the book is too disturbing for a 6-year-old and decides to read a different one, but Sam insists on reading Mr. Babadook. The book describes the titular monster, the Babadook. He is a tall, pale-faced humanoid in a top hat with taloned fingers. Mr. Babadook torments its victims after they become aware of its existence. Sam cries himself to sleep after reading the book. Disturbed by the book, Amelia hides the storybook above her closet and goes to bed. Sam wakes up at night and tells Amelia that the Babadook is real, and it opened his closet's door. Amelia comforts him and assures him that it doesn't exist. However, she herself is slightly spooked by strange noises she hears at night. Next morning, Amelia drops Sam at her sister Claire's house. She warns Sam not to bring up Mr. Babadook with her aunt. She then goes to her work. Amelia's co-worker Robbie, seeing her tired and sleep-deprived, offers to cover her shifts and asks her to go home and rest. Amelia, initially hesitant, agrees to take the leave. She uses the break to spend some time at the mall by herself. While alone, Amelia keeps finding herself lost in thoughts of her late husband Oskar. She misses him terribly. On her way back home, Amelia notices 10 missed calls from her sister Claire on her mobile. Amelia, worried, quickly rushes to Claire's home to find Samuel sitting outside and Claire's daughter Ruby hysterically crying. Claire reveals that Sam wouldn't stop talking about Mr. Babadook, which frightened Ruby. Amelia apologizes to Claire and takes Sam home. Sam continues his mischievous behavior. He steals the key to their home's basement and ransacks the room. Amelia scolds him badly for destroying the room, as she has kept all of her late husband's belongings in it. That night, while having dinner, Amelia finds glass shards in her food. She immediately suspects Sam, but he blames the Babadook. Amelia is getting increasingly frustrated with Sam. Later that night, Amelia finds the Mr. Babadook storybook in Sam's room. She tears the pages of the book and throws it outside. The next day, Amelia takes Sam to Ruby's birthday party. Sam insists on staying with his mother, but Amelia forces him to mingle with other children while she talks to Claire's friends. At Ruby's treehouse, Ruby tells Sam that he is not good enough to have a father. It angers Sam, who then pushes her off of the treehouse, and she ends up breaking her nose. While Amelia has a separate argument with Claire. Claire insists that it has been 7 years since Oskar died, and Amelia needs to move on. Amelia retorts that she has already moved on and doesn't even talk about her husband anymore. Amelia further adds that she has always been invested in Claire's life, but it is Claire who is not interested in her life, as she doesn't even visit her home. Claire bluntly responds that she doesn't like visiting her home because she can't bear Sam. Amelia takes great offense to that. On the drive home, Sam continues to talk about Babadook and tells Amelia that he is sitting next to him in the car. An already emotionally exhausted Amelia breaks into tears. She wonders why Sam can't just be like a normal child. A frightened Sam then suffers a seizure. Amelia, scared, rushes him to a hospital and gets him sedatives from a pediatrician. Later that night, she gives him the pills and puts him to sleep. Due to Sam's sedatives, Amelia gets a full night's sleep for the first time in a while and wakes up feeling happy. As she proceeds to do her morning chores, she hears a knock on her door. She opens the door, but doesn't find anyone. She then notices the Babadook book that she tore up on her doorstep glued back together. The resembled book contains a message for her saying that the Babadook will become stronger if she continues to deny its existence. The book also contains chilling pop-ups of Amelia killing her dog Bugsy, Sam, and then herself. Amelia, freaked out, pours fuel on the book and immediately burns it. Soon afterwards, she receives a disturbing phone call where a raspy voice says Babadook over and over again. Amelia, scared, goes to the police station. However, Amelia has no proof of the stalking, and when she sees the Babadook suit hung up behind the front desk at the police station, she abruptly leaves. Strange things continue to happen with Amelia. While sleeping at night, she wakes up to the sound of her door opening. A figure appears from the door, and a frightened Amelia hides behind her blanket. She then hears the same raspy voice saying Babadook, and she dares to peek through her blanket when Babadook crawls to the roof right above her bed. The creepy figure then makes a squeaky noise before jumping on her. Amelia wakes up in a cold sweat and realizes it was a nightmare. But the strange dreams and occurrences continue, and Amelia starts to become more isolated and shut in. Amelia starts to increasingly get frustrated and angry with Sam. One night, Amelia wakes up to noises of Sam talking over the phone with someone. When she goes to inspect, she finds Sam asking their neighbor, Mrs. Roach, if they can stay over at her house. An exhausted Amelia gets angry and takes the battery out of the phone and shouts at Sam for disobeying her constantly. She then draws a knife from a kitchen drawer and cuts the phone line with a knife. She makes Sam take a pill and go to sleep. However, Sam tricks her and doesn't take the pill. Amelia dozes off on the couch watching television. When she wakes up, she finds a bloodied body of Sam laying next to her. She freaks out and pants in horror when she suddenly hears the sound of Sam screaming her name. Amelia quickly snaps out of her hallucination and finds herself standing with the knife, waving it aggressively at a frightened Sam. She, scared, frantically puts the knife back into the drawer. Shortly afterwards, Amelia sees Sam walking into the basement. She follows him into the basement, warning him against going in there. In the basement, Amelia is amazed to see Oskar. She embraces him and seeks comfort when Oskar tells her that if she wants him to return, she must bring the boy to him. Amelia, puzzled and spooked, starts walking away from him. Oscar's voice deepens and he again tells Amelia to bring him the boy. Amelia realizes that he is a creation of the Babadook and runs out of the basement. However, Babadook follows her through the house. Frightened, she locks herself in a room and then suddenly hears a sound of something dropping behind her. When she checks, she finds the hat of Babadook and the Babadook himself crawling out of the fireplace. Amelia, terrified and crying, is unable to run and tries to drag herself away from the fireplace. Helpless, she looks away and keeps saying to herself that it is not real when Babadook enters her body. Later, as Amelia watches television, Bugsy sneaks out of Sam's room and barks at her. A possessed Amelia then closes the TV and chases Bugsy through the house until she catches him. She then angrily breaks Bugsy's neck and kills him. Amelia then drops the body on the floor and forcefully pulls out one of her teeth and starts bleeding through her mouth. She notices Sam watching her from the stairs and follows him upstairs. A frightened Sam locks himself in a room, but Amelia, possessed, starts frantically banging at the door until she breaks in. Upon seeing Sam, she shrieks like an animal and hovers towards him. A petrified Sam wets his pants. Amelia then berates him and tells him how she wishes that it was him who should have died and not her husband. Sam then screams at her that she is not his mother. Amelia, enraged at his audacity, gets closer to Sam, screaming at him when he throws firecrackers at her, startling her. He then swiftly runs downstairs and eventually lures her into the basement. When Amelia runs into the basement, Sam makes her trip and knocks her out. When Amelia wakes up, she finds herself tied up with a frightened Sam sitting nearby. Sam tries to talk to the mother, but she shrieks, scaring him away. After a moment, summoning some courage, he again gets closer to her and tries to appeal to his mother to let the monster out of her. Amelia manages to free her hands and starts strangling Sam. A pale Sam lovingly caresses her face, causing her to throw Sam aside. She then starts convulsing and vomits an inky black substance and collapses. Amelia has expelled Babadook from her body. Sam shakes Amelia and pleads with her to get up. Amelia eventually wakes up and they get out of the basement. Sam then reminds Amelia you can't get rid of the Babadook, when an unseen force drags him upstairs into Amelia's bedroom. Worried, Amelia follows him. She embraces and comforts Sam in bed. The bed then suddenly starts to shake violently. Amelia, fed up, screams what the monster wants from her. The bed stops trembling and Amelia sees the apparition of Oskar appear from the dark. He tells her to put her seatbelt on and they will be there in 10 minutes. Amelia, sobbing, pleads with Oskar to stop when a sound of a car crashing is heard and Oscar's body is decapitated. Weeping, Amelia collapses on the ground. Suddenly, the Babadook appears in the dark. Being forced by the Babadook to rewatch a vision of her husband's death, Amelia furiously confronts him. Babadook gets angry and the walls start cracking and his growling gets louder. Amelia threatens to kill Babadook if he again tries to touch Sam. Suddenly, Sam starts being pulled towards Babadook. Amelia, furious, pulls Sam back and screams at Babadook, making it retreat into the basement. Amelia follows him and locks him inside the basement. After this ordeal, Amelia and Sam start to recover. Amelia is throwing Sam a birthday party for the very first time on the same day he was born. She is now more attentive and caring towards him, encouraging him toward the weapons that he makes and being impressed at Sam's magic tricks. Sam also found a new school. Amelia gathers earthworms in a bowl and takes them to the basement where the Babadook resides, while she makes Sam go outside the house. She places the bowl on the floor for the Babadook to eat. The beast appears and tries to attack her, but Amelia, albeit scared, calms Babadook down and it quietly goes back to a corner, taking the earthworms with it. Amelia then returns to the yard to celebrate Sam's birthday. That was my recap of the movie. Hope you enjoyed it. Now comment on what your favorite part was and make sure to hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel. Until next time, this has been Total Recapped.